Hey everyone, I'm Brian Brain. I'm from the Lazy Boys group in Engineering 120. This is the presentation for our hovercraft design project. So myself, along with Matt Edwards and Wilmer Ramirez, we got together and we designed a hovercraft for this project that we were assigned. We faced quite a few challenges throughout the project, mostly having to do with the fact that we're geographically separated at the moment. Um, Not being able to get together and work on a uh, uh, like a physical concept for the project was really difficult throughout this, and it made it pretty hard for us to be able to imagine uh, a working prototype and not really knowing whether or not it would actually work or not. So that was the first big challenge that we faced. Some of the others were that we are pretty new to SolidWorks, so the fact that we had to create this entire hovercraft in SolidWorks made it pretty difficult. I know the fan was definitely one of the more challenging parts of this entire project just because it has some pretty specialized parts to it. The body was difficult, and even the battery, it's, getting the measurements right so that everything, when it is finally assembled, fits together nicely. It made it pretty difficult, especially since we're so new to SolidWorks. So one of the key things in creating a hovercraft is first understanding how they work. Essentially, we each did our own individual research and found out the basic theories behind how a hovercraft works. And what it boils down to is it has a hovercraft typically has two fans, one pointing downwards so that the airflow gets sucked in from the top and pushed out the bottom, and then another fan pointing backwards behind the hovercraft to give it forward momentum. So um, another key feature in a hovercraft is the skirt. So what a skirt is a essentially a ring around the base of the hovercraft itself that contains some of the air that's forced down by one of those fans, and it allows the hovercraft to sit on a cushion of air, and that's what allows the hovercraft to hover. The Lazy Boys, we came up with a few different configurations as far as the hovercraft goes. Um, we wanted each configuration to focus on a different area regarding the hovercraft's performance and its how long we'd expect it to be able to work, and a few other um, design considerations like that. So the first configuration was a lightweight one where we wanted to use aluminum for the body material. The fan is a fan that we found on DigiKey. It's a very, very, very small fan, and then we decided to use the Zeus 9-volt battery throughout all three configurations just because it seemed to be a very reliable and efficient way of powering all three fans that we could easily scale to each separate configuration. So second configuration was low cost. That used cardboard for the body. Obviously cardboard is very low cost, and a very inexpensive but still powerful fan that would be able to lift the the weight of the entire hovercraft. And then the third configuration was our heavy duty one. It used plastic as the body material. Obviously that's a lot heavier than both the aluminum and cardboard. So as a result we needed two substantially stronger fans, and then we also had to use two of those Zeus 9-volt batteries to be able to give it the lift that it needed. As you can see, it had to be able to lift almost 700 grams of mass, and the fans and the battery would have been able to do that. But essentially, we wound up going with the lightweight version just because it was the easiest to design in SolidWorks. That's one of the big considerations was, like I said, we're not very proficient with SolidWorks, so um, one of the key things that we had to keep in mind was the simplicity of the design so that we were able to actually execute it and provide something that would theoretically work even though we're not able to physically test the hovercraft itself. So if you do some research on sort of smaller scale hovercrafts on the internet, you'll find a lot of different shapes and sizes for the hovercrafts. We decided to go with the circular one for ours as the final body shape, just because we felt like it would be able to equally um, the airflow that would be created, the air pressure that would be created underneath the hovercraft would be able to be contained a little bit better. We know that the battery would probably make up the majority of the mass of this hovercraft. So we tried to get it as close to center as possible, but we felt like having the fan directly in the center would create an even enough cushion to sort of negate the extra mass of the battery on that specific part. And as you can see, we went with the dual fan configuration, one pushing air underneath into the skirt so it would be contained, so that the air pressure would be contained underneath there, and then a second fan in the back that would generate the forward momentum of the hovercraft. So it was difficult to create the model just because we weren't able to actually test anything to make sure it did work. Everything that we came up with was based on calculations that we had made. Um, so things might not work out exactly as we had expected or hoped, but we're pretty proud with how the design turned out. Um, Myself, Brian, I created the body of the hovercraft. Um, Wilmer made the model for the battery, and Matt made the model for the two fans. And Wilmer actually had to come in and do a little bit of scaling to make sure everything fit perfectly so that when it came time to assemble it in this final drawing, that it would all work together and not have any issues. And like I said earlier, each part was chosen for a different reason. The body shape was chosen because it was pretty simple to design in SolidWorks, and we felt like it had the best chance of creating an even area of pressure underneath the craft. The battery was designed because it was able to provide sufficient power to the two fans while not weighing too much theoretically to so that the hovercraft could actually lift it. And the fans were chosen because of their pressure. They were able to provide enough pressure to theoretically lift the hovercraft and the battery, and the one on the back could provide enough momentum so that it would move forward. It's hard to offer advice to new EGR 120 students on this specific project just because I feel like our experience with it was pretty unique in that we didn't actually get to work together on a physical um, prototype. So a lot of what we have here is just conjecture, and we didn't get to test anything, unfortunately. So, I mean, my advice would be to actually test what you have and make sure that it works before you commit fully to a design, because as it is right now, we don't really know if it works or not. So test and make sure that your each configuration would actually work before you commit to a certain design.